Hello and welcome back to Science and Sports. I'm your host, Simon Heidenreich. Today, I'm joined by someone whose work sits right at the intersection of elite sport, human development, and real meaningful change in how we approach performance. Nick Rothwell. Nick is a founding partner of Retribe, a collective that helps individuals and organizations navigate performance, recovery, and well-being through a more human lens. He's also a television host, public speaker, and former elite hockey player. Nick and I first met at the IIHF Symposium 2025 in Stockholm, where Nick gave a standard talk titled Not Softer, Stronger, Coaching the Full Spectrum of Human Performance. Today I'm excited to dig deeper into that message, explore the limits of mental toughness, and talk about how we can create systems that are not just high performing, but human centered. Have fun in today's episode. This podcast is presented by Like Me, your partner for social media and online marketing from Weiden, and Praxis im Salzhaus, your contact for physiotherapy and health in Altenstadt. Hi, and welcome back to my Science and Sports podcast. Today, very special guest for me, Nick Rothwell. Nick, how are you doing?
I'm really good, Simon. Very grateful that you asked me to come on your podcast. That you speak about a lot of subjects that I'm very interested in.
Thank you very much. We met 2 weeks ago, I think, in Sweden, in Stockholm, at the IIHF World Championship Symposium. You were a speaker there, and your topic of your speech was not softer, stronger. That you look at the performance on a human perspective kind of way. Can you share a little bit what your speech was about and why are you interested in this topic?
Yeah, it was exactly what you said. Like looking at the athlete as a human, and it's because that's exactly what athletes are, humans. And I think that it's just something that in my journey, I've just been very interested in human performance, and the idea that we can show up and I always like this term. We can maximize our experience in the sports that we play because it's not just about elite level high performance. It's about all athletes playing sports because we're designed to play, to have fun, to flourish through athletic abilities, so really all athletes at all stages of their careers, at all abilities. I just want to try to be able to provide a platform so that not only the athletes but coaches and parents as well can maximize their experience in that sport.
You have been a former hockey player too, right?
That's correct. I grew up playing hockey in Saskatchewan
Uh,
in the 80s. So
mhm.
that would have been known as a very, I know it is really now. I mean, I grew up in I was born in a farming community and I grew up in Saskatoon, which is the big city in the province. And it's always been known for very tough, resilient hockey players, players who aren't afraid to drop the gloves, but also players who are renowned for playing through pain and the other things of like manning up and sucking it up and all the stuff that we learn as children and coaches teach us and those ideologies and the culture were really deeply imprinted me in as a person, and I believe it made me extremely resilient and determined in many ways, but also, Simon, it handcuffed me in a lot of ways as well. And now, as a 54-year-old man, I can look back at all of the good that I was given, but also look at where some of the harm and some people would say trauma was created that ultimately through my life, like I say, it kind of handcuffed me. It took away my
Mhm.
ability to be able to even do one simple thing, which was to ask for help. Because my dad, was from a coal mining village in South Yorkshire. He was a rugby player. He was taught things like real men don't ask for help. Real men don't show emotions, and certainly real men never cry. So these were things again that were really deeply imprinted upon me. When I knew that I had challenges in my life, I was like, oh, yeah. I would look at myself in the mirror, like, you need some help, buddy. But then I would remember back to suck it up, just dust yourself off, put on a brave face, go at it. When really inside my body was like, oh, you're dying here. You need some.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in this being able to look back and reflect, become aware of all of these traits. I've been able to work with the business that I have now, and a business partner who is a sports psychologist, and able to not only help people have some healing from everything from physical injury and trauma, but also some past traumas, but also preventative coaching methods, so that really, and it was something that I delivered in the coaching symposium, which is, can we coach and do no harm?
Mm-hmm.
And again, people, you might look at, oh, you just teaching the kids some toughness, but really what we've learned about neuroscience and about threat-based coaching, and this is coaching like right from a very early age, right up to your teens, where your brain, as you know, is still developing, especially in young men. It takes a little bit longer to develop your decision making area. The prefrontal cortex, our emotional regulation area, hasn't fully developed, so we can revert into the amygdala and our fears, and we can respond or react in that. And sometimes those are not healthy responses. So really, a job of the coach is not to activate fear and to activate challenge. So we can challenge our athletes rather than have them perform through fear. They perform through challenge, and we know that is much more healthy, and it also creates better results.
You just said it right. It was also the thing where I wanted to dig a little deeper into, that it's important about giving your athletes a challenge and not about mm, showing fear to them, because then the performance obviously goes down. Is it then, or how important is it then for you, after you had your experiences you just shared in your past growing up, also as a player, but also as a coach, how important is it that you use the right language?
Yeah. So just an example. I would have been, say, 14 or 15 years old. I had hurt my wrist. I bent my wrist back in a play. It cracked. It really hurt. And I kind of went flush. Like, I knew this was like really, something wasn't right. And I
Hmm.
remember clutching my wrist, and in the intermission saying to my coach, my wrist hurts. And his response, his language back, right? And his words back were, suck it
Hmm.
up. So that was him choosing to use these words, suck it up, right? Which means just don't worry about it, right? Rather than, perhaps, and what happened, Simon, was I'd broken my scaphoid.
Hmm.
And because he said suck it up, I played, that was the beginning of the year. I played to the end of the year with a broken scaphoid, where, it's a floating bone, right? Your thumb pivots on. It had
Hmm.
worn away. So I'm like now, I think 15 years old, or maybe I turned 16, and I was going into hospital to have a bone graft done from my hip to my wrist. Okay. Because a coach chose the language of suck it up rather than having someone look at it. Are you sure you're okay? Can I check mobility? What happened? So rather than being compassionate, he was, what he thought was being tough, right? And by saying suck it up. So it's very important for us as coaches to acknowledge that hockey is inherently a tough game. It has an inherently tough culture, which is play through pain, which is something that, again, we have all. I mean, I am not unique in this situation over the wrist. I'm sure probably 95% of the guys and gals listening to this will be like, that happened to me too.
Yeah.
Maybe not the surgery, but definitely the suck it up, uh, which, and this was in the 80s. This is still happening in 2025. So it's very important for coaches to, what I call, respond, not react. So you're in a very responsible position. You are the leader of 20 people in a changing room at any age. So you have a responsibility to 20 individuals, knowing that perhaps there are some individuals who might like attention. Something inside of them might be lacking. They might be not be getting a lot of love and attention at home, so they might require some attention in the changing room. So they might over embellish something, and
Mm-hmm.
that happens. I wasn't one of those people. I was one. If something was hurting on me, I said it, even though it would take a lot for me to say something. But I do know some athletes. So I think coaches have got to understand that there's a spectrum of an athlete. That some people will, like, I have a son. If he hurts himself, he won't tell me. He won't. He's almost embarrassed to tell me. And he'll be bleeding. You know, he won't want to tell me. So we have to be aware so that we can respond to each individual in a healthy way, where we
Mm-hmm.
can be kind with our language. You don't have to be judgmental. Like, are you sure you're okay? You know, you're you're going to put it on the athlete to say, yeah, I'm okay, when really the responsibility is to get them checked out by the medical staff,
Yeah.
and write a report and let the parents know that you would suggest you don't have to be a doctor, but
Yeah.
you would suggest it getting looked at, because it's happened to me and it's happened to thousands of others. We can't dismiss that it hasn't happened to that child, that individual at that moment. So I really do suggest to coaches to respond in a compassionate way and not react in a way of like you think you know that individual and that you have to shame them into putting their glove back on and getting back onto the ice. We know that this is not a healthy response.
I think it's also a big part of it is the responsibility you have as a coach or as a sporting director, or also like for example me or you as sports scientists on the other end of the spectrum. If a player feels unhealthy or unwell, we are responsible to make sure what's going on and don't just, like you said, react after something is happening or ignore it in the worst case, but really be on point of going on, of knowing what's going on with the player.
I'm not a scientist. I'm just I'm just a hockey player who ended up becoming a TV presenter, Simon, and I I went from playing hockey, and getting my education to becoming a live sports broadcaster,
Hmm.
covering and an entrepreneur. And then I had a lot of challenges in my life from the ages of 30 to 45. I struggled with the lack of purpose and identity I had when I stopped playing hockey.
Hmm.
So I stopped playing hockey at the age of like say 29. That was my last year. And I was already working on TV. So I really struggled with the identity there. And I never drank or used any substances as an athlete because, my dad was an alcoholic. So I didn't want to end up like him. And, but quickly I found that a drink would alleviate some of these fears and anxieties that going from being a hockey player to a Sky Sports broadcaster.
Hmm.
So, so I had a lot of challenges and I struggled with alcoholism. And that was, my point was that I knew I needed help and I didn't have the ability to ask for help until the point where I was dying. Like I was dying in a squat in Toronto at the age of 45 years old, where liver failure, kidney failure, acute pancreatitis. It was 1 year after Wade Belak, had passed away, and I was going to be another one of those guys. I had never made it into the NHL, but I certainly had a very high profile career in TV. But I was on my way
Hmm.
out, and it's in the journey of sobriety, Simon, that I'm just a learner. And the scientist, the psychology all comes from Dr. Lisa Jervis, my business partner, and my experience, my giving is my experience, in the fact that I was a hockey player. I was I had the job of a lifetime on TV. It was pretty cool. I had this life where I've been able to reflect and go right back to the ages of about 4 or 5 years old and see there are certain behaviors and certain things that have happened to me, that has made me curious. So really, I'm a learner of this. I'm not a scientist. So I just wanted to, because I just wanted
Yeah.
to really know that I'm just a learner. I'm a 54-year-old knucklehead who's been through an awful lot, who has now immersed myself into building a platform to help people like me from the time I was 5, but also through all of those challenging areas. So it's not like we have to look at like, oh, people who are in distress, who have mental health challenges and maybe substance use challenges. They're always symptoms to a problem. And they're normally solutions to a problem. So through my experience, I've been able to help people go further back. And again, we look at prevention, not just treatment of challenges that athletes and coaches and parents have all gone through. So, okay, I'm not a scientist anyway.
Oh, okay, just to clear that up. Um, you mentioned a couple of times now that your company you started with your um, colleague called Retribe. You shared it to me or to the audience in Stockholm 2 weeks ago a little bit what your yeah, the purpose of your company, what you're working on, and you also just shared a little bit about the challenges you faced growing up in your whole life. What was the main reason to start that company, and what is it really like focused on? So for my listeners to get a, I know it a little bit because we already talked about it, but yeah, to share it for my audience once again, if that's possible.
So yeah, the inspiration or the well, actually, it goes back even to when I was 40 years old. I was
Hmm.
40 years old. I had an office in London. I ran a production company, and I knew then I was having challenges with alcohol use. And I was like, when did this happen, Nick? Like, why all of a sudden are you taking a drink at lunchtime? Are you taking a drink before lunchtime? What's going on? And it was when I stopped playing hockey that I started to use alcohol and other party favors, hanging out in Soho and the nightclubs in Soho and stuff. But I started to use alcohol and I was like, wow, it's when I stopped playing hockey that I lost my identity. I lost the purpose. And I started to use alcohol as a way to fill a hole that playing the sport left. So it was when I was 40, I became aware of that. And I wanted to create a TV program, a documentary series looking at ex-athletes and how
Hmm.
ex-athletes really struggled when you stop playing the sports, and not just elite level, but the 99.9% of us who just maybe make a little bit of money as a semi-professional, or I did play professional, but um, I also played a couple of seasons in semi-professional, and also like I noted that um, players who even didn't receive any money still had the same sense of loss when and I was looking at Premiership football players at the time, and people who would a lot of turn to alcohol and gambling, and it became very obvious to me that this is something that a lot of athletes at any level struggle with. So I got sober, and I got sober in 12-step recovery, and really they have the market cornered. They're really good at doing what they do. But I was like, what
Hmm.
about all the other people who feel this disconnect when they leave the sport? Um, and I built a company. At the time, it wasn't called it's called Reborn. And the I asked people about it and said it sounded a little bit too religious, and I was like, yeah, you're right. And at the time, another group of men had started this thing called Drive Tribe. I don't know if you've ever heard of Jeremy Clarkson, but they had Top Gear, and they started a thing
Yeah.
called yeah. Before they went onto Amazon, they started a thing called Drive Tribe, and I was like, wow, I really like the tribe. And I really like the because it stands for reinvigorate, reinvent, reestablish, reconnect, all the re's. So then I built Retribe. And again, at the time, I didn't know the significance of the word because over my 9 years of being curious, I've looked into anthropology and human evolution and how we've evolved and our innate skills and our innate purpose and our desire to contribute to something and to have purpose. And when that's taken away, a lot of us can feel very empty. So I thought
Hmm.
Retribe was going to be a way to get people into small groups of accountability because that's the number one thing that athletes lose when they leave a team sport is accountability. Our ability to show up for others. All of a sudden we don't have that. So and also no one's out there to call us on our BS. Like if you go into a changing room, someone can smell beer on your breath. They're going to be like, "Dude, are you okay? What's going on?" Maybe if it's a continuous pattern. So you
Hmm.
have guys looking out for you, and all of a sudden you become a lone wolf in the world when you leave team sport, and you're out there and you're on to fend for yourself. And in terms of human evolution, we just didn't survive as lone wolves. So retribe was a way of giving you back your team. And then it has just evolved into, oh, it wasn't just when you stopped playing hockey, Nick. There was elements of right from the time you started playing hockey to the time you left playing hockey, all the way through leaving playing hockey. And that's really where we focus now, is like at all stages of careers. And I met Misha in London. She practices her sports psychology at Brunel University, and she was also like the England Lionesses' first sports
Mhm.
psychologist. So she was a sports psychologist before there were called sports psychologists. It goes back over 30 years. So she's a woman of extreme experience. And I said to her, like, people are coming to Retry, but we need to have a transformational program so that people can actually partake. It's great to come together and to find your tribe and to be accountable, but you need to have, well, I do, and I continue to do, is to need some tools, to operate in this world. So let's give people tools. And that's where tough through tender was born. And it's basically just the analogy of a spectrum of toughness through the tenderness, or you could call it the yin and the yang. It's the balance of life, this full spectrum of our emotions, and how we can help people tap into that full spectrum of emotion. Because I had found for many years, I was like just operating on like 10 or 15% of what I could. And through learning about the power of compassion, the power of vulnerability, the power of self-awareness, the power of being grounded and being rooted, that I've opened up a larger scale of power. Because that's really what I'm interested in, is how can we unleash the full power plant of the human performance. And through this, I've discovered that fear-based, power over, threat-based coaching can suppress a lot of that
Mhm.
emotion. And if we're suppressing our emotions, we're not operating at full capacity. So that's how Retribe has evolved into what it is today. And um, that's why, we look at the humans, we look at people as humans, because for us to get to where we are, Simon, it's taken a long time. So let's acknowledge it. Let's acknowledge what's gotten us where we are, and a lot of that comes down to compassion and vulnerability and purpose and storytelling, as well as, like, you mentioned at the beginning of the talk, was like our ability to show up, our determination, that anterior cingulate cortex, the
Mhm.
motivation muscle in our brain. How do we activate that? Through challenge, right? And so again, we got to where we are by challenging ourselves. How do we get that fruit up on that tree? How do we kill that big beast over there? How do we make fire? It was always challenges. And in those challenges, we made mistakes. So we would create a mild state of frustration in this challenge state. And that's when the brain just lights up. So, creating, and we mentioned it, creating drills that actually challenge players.
Mhm.
Don't just do the same thing over and over. Challenge your players, push them so they can make mistakes. When you get an early group of learn to plays, and you're encouraging them to push on an outside edge to the point where like they fall, and you applaud them when they fall. You're like, yeah, man, you're getting it. You're reaching, you're pushing. You don't want to play it safe, and to the point where, so you want to encourage not failure, but encourage making mistakes so that they can
Mhm.
learn. That's a long rant, isn't it? I hope that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, it makes total sense, and I really enjoyed listening to you, um, because you mentioned a lot of things that I find really interesting. One of which being that you want to coach and to live like the full spectrum of life. And
Mm,
you mentioned in the symposium in Stockholm, I don't know if you can remember, but you said something along the lines of that you can't rewrite the history or change the past, but you can change the next chapter. And I
yeah,
think it's important for us humans that you acknowledge, like you said, that you have a past, what you are living now, but that you can't change it, but you can change the way that you think about it, and it obviously um, then changes your approach for the upcoming events in the future.
yeah.
Does it make sense what I'm trying to say?
we're on the same page, and I think that we isn't, let's say me as a coach, I can't change what my coaches did to me. I can't change what my parents did to me. And I don't know if I got the metaphor out there, but it was like they were all given a spoon to cut a loaf of bread. It's the
Mm-hmm.
only tool they had. And yes, they got a slice of bread out of it, but it was a bit jagged and a bit rough. But we just know more now. When we know more, we can do more. So this is about sharpening the coach. So giving the coach the tools, not just on how to speak to players and how and processes of how to enable a room to flourish. Do you remember the comet metaphor that I made? Like every player is like a comet with history and trauma and joy and sadness all coming into the changing room. And we're comets too, and we have history too. And I really feel if you're going to optimize your position in this world as a coach, go on the journey of self discovery so that you can be aware of how you learned what you learned. Don't blame it. Don't say it was wrong. It was what it is. But just go, do you know what? I can open up my spectrum, my capacity to become a little bit more compassionate or vulnerable or self aware so that I can use the best of the past with the best of what we know today so that we can again, it's like having a new pair of glasses. It's like going, oh, okay, I get it now. I can see differently.
Mm-hmm.
We know as human beings we've only got these eyeballs can only see a certain spectrum of colors. So there's more out there, right? And I'm not saying we have to design new eyeballs, but they're the tools that we've got. And
Yeah.
we have tools now for us to open up our toolkits on how we can operate for ourselves, become self-aware, and so that we can ultimately, like I said before, respond through self, our genuine self, our truth, rather than react in our ego, which is, I need to command the room here, or they're not going to respect me. If I lose the room, I'm going to lose them forever. I'll get the room by yelling at them so they're all scared of me a little bit because I've always been taught that you need to fear your leaders. Now, that's just a reaction through the ego of me really not feeling confident or not, not or a feel of being judged or not being seen or not being listened to. I don't know if it's true or not, but I always heard, and I heard it on something silly, but that Alfred Hitchcock, the director, would always hire someone so he could fire them. So he would
Okay.
hire someone and he would yell at them and say, "You're fired." I don't know if it's true, but it's a good story. So that everyone would fear him.
Okay.
So so he would, if you mess out, you're gonna. So now you've got your whole crew operating in fear. I can't make a mistake. And no one's going to thrive when you operating, and this goes in work environment and home environment and change environment. If you have people who are scared of you, which is different than respect, who are scared of you, they're going to be scared of making a mistake because they're going to be scared of getting called out. They don't want to be embarrassed. So we know they're going to pull back. They're going to hold back and maybe give you 65, 75, max 80% of their ability. They're certainly not going to learn. And that's our job as coaches, is to teach. So we need to create that environment where the athlete can show up and give 100%, make mistakes, fall over, and not be punished for it, but be applauded for it.
Yeah. I think maybe you can confirm or deny it as a former hockey player too. But I think there are some times, some situations where it's a good thing when the coach is yelling in the locker room. Maybe you're down after 5 minutes or whatever reason. But the main point, I think, is for a championship team or a professional, no, not professional, but for a team with ambitions, that the players are buying into the coach's thoughts and also the coaches buying into it. Because if he, as the leader of that group, isn't 100% into the same principles that he wants the players to be in, then you have a problem. And I think if there are some types of coaches who yell more often. For me, as a sports scientist and strength coach, I try to find my way with having a little closer relationship to the players because we're mostly the same age, and some former teammates, some former opponents. But I gain the trust of them with the knowledge, and they see positive results and not about just screaming at them the whole practice. So I think
Yeah.
there are different roles that you have to always manage at the same time.
Mm.
But the big point where I'm trying to get is that you as a player have to buy in, and the coach has to live the same attitude as he wants the players to live.
I think that it's what you need to be able to do is show up as your genuine self.
Mm-hmm.
So I see some coaches in the Czech Republic. I don't mind naming him because I think two of them. Peter Chayanek played in the NHL. Andre Vasile, another name legend that I've watched them coach their camp here or their schools here. They don't yell and they don't have whistles. And it's like the kids really focus. Now that's just their styles. They
Mm-hmm.
don't yell. You can't even hear them giving instructions when you're watching. He just puts his hand up. All the kids come to him. He speaks to them. That's his style. Now I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what he's like during a game, but I also know that I'm a yeller of enthusiasm. Come on, you can do it. Yell all you want is if it's enthusiasm. I think that yelling to call somebody out, to swear at somebody and to punish somebody, I think that again, that's just going to make that person shrink,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Now, maybe that coach knows somebody well enough to be able to say, hey, that person doesn't mind a rocket up their butt. You know what I mean? And also, when a coach shows passion during a game, again, if you're not yelling obscenities or yelling at the ref, and causing the ref to then that's another friction area. But yelling, in terms of enthusiasm and instructions, and that's all for players. That's all. It's all a symbiotic relationship. But the most important thing is to show up through your authentic self. And
Mm-hmm.
like I say, I'm a yeller. But I now yell enthusiasm. I once caught myself yelling at somebody, and I could see visually. I scared them. I knew then that I was reacting through. I was trying to. It was the first session with this group, and I was trying to get some respect. And I went into my
Mm-hmm.
old self, and I was like, "You need to yell to get respect." I scared that person. I ended up taking that person and the parent after that practice, and I apologized. And I said, I'm going to try to do better. And that was a learning moment for me. So no one along the line of this change sign is expecting perfection out of anybody. If we want to push our players to make mistakes so that they can learn, then we as coaches have got to expect to make mistakes and not deny them because we're
Mm-hmm.
the coaches. Because coaches are the leaders, we can't be seen to making mistakes. I would suggest that that is false. And I would suggest that if you apologize to a group of players and say, I got it wrong, you're going to create a bond of trust. And when that bond of trust happens, that's what we talked about psychological safety, where the room is safe. That's when you have players flourish. And again, I've had that happen to me in my life as being a stepdad, where I've learned more through being a stepdad through just about any point of my life, Simon. But when I've been able to say I'm sorry, I made a mistake, to get eye contact with a young man. I have three stepsons, and for me to say I'm sorry, I made a mistake, and then for the bond to create, because they're all of a sudden like, hey, he just said sorry. So that's what men do. Men can own up to mistakes instead of being this kind of, we never make mistakes. So it's this, again, being able to be authentic, own our mistakes. It creates, none of this happens overnight. This is something that when you get it, I mean, I know kids are already doing dryland training right now. They've already started preseason training, and the NHL isn't even finished.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's something that is if you have your team together 300 odd days a year, then it's something that you just need to start with day one. And it's something I want to try to show up for my authentic self. I want to try to use the tools that are available to me today so that I can get to know myself better. And I always have this saying, Simon, you can only know someone as deeply as you've met yourself. So try to figure that one out, right? You can only know someone as deeply as you've met yourself. Now, Simon, as a sports scientist, how many people have given you the tools for you to be able to say, who is Simon? Yeah. Does it ever,
Tough question. Tough
Mhm.
question. I'm thinking now. Yeah.
You know, and doesn't that make you curious?
Yeah.
Wow. Look in the mirror when this is over and go, who am I? Well, I'm a sports scientist. I'm an ex-hockey player. I'm a son. I'm a partner. But we always gauge ourselves on our relationship with other people, not
Mhm.
on our relationship with who we are. And this is what I've learned over I'm just trying to get to know me so that I can show up and I never say the best version of me because it's always a version, but my real truth self. And my truth self is just a knucklehead who makes mistakes, who loves, who cares, who is found purpose in trying to help people in this world. And I wake up every morning knowing that I have purpose, but I fumble through this world. I make mistakes. I have my dark moments. I'm a human. I'm the full spectrum of human. I have joy,
Mhm.
sadness, frustration, anger, all of it. But I've learned that by having a relationship with myself, I have a healthier relationship with my emotions. And I know that if I'm fearful, I don't have to react in a way that's going to scare people. I can actually sit there and go, what am I scared about? Why? What's it trying to teach me? Have I done the best today? Have I shown up for myself? Have I shown up for others? Oh, Nick, you know what? You could have probably done a little bit more. And I can reflect and I can learn. So I'm going to go through this world now for however long I'm here in a journey of curiosity, of trying to acknowledge and trying to learn more so that I can do better. And like I ended the presentation, right, by Maya Angelou, just do
Mhm.
your best until you know better. And when you know better, do better.
No,
Yeah.
that's a lot to take in.
Oh yeah. Let's do it. Let's take it in.
Yeah, I mean that's why we're here, and obviously you will never be um, the best version of yourself if you don't find solutions or find reasonings for maybe misbehavior or outbursts of any kind of form. So if you're, like you said, I don't even want to add a lot to it because you said it perfectly. But if you don't be in balance with yourself and find out what is going wrong, then you don't, or you will never achieve like the true self love for yourself. And then, as you mentioned, also, you can't show that or give that feeling to someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a curiosity and son, it's not like anything's wrong with us. It's just that we live in a very different place than we did tens of thousands of years ago, but our bodies are still inherently driven from that tens of thousands of years of lineage of purpose, of belonging, of contributing, and I think that this is why sport is so important because it really taps into that kind of primal need, for challenge, for fun, for play. Kids learn through playing. And we need hockey. And hockey, I do believe, is the best sport on the planet because it's got all elements of all sport and you do it on a sheet of ice,
Yeah.
which is madness. And the friendships that I've created along the way, the bonds that I've created are lifelong bonds because I mentioned Sebastian Junger in my talk. How he talks about how when we are in this state of challenge of play, and there are threats available, like you can actually hurt yourself. Then even stronger bonds are created. And I think that's why hockey players, particularly when they end their career, they're like, oh, I miss it, And every hockey player, it doesn't matter what level. I'm sure I don't know what it's like to play in the NHL or win the Stanley Cup, but I know every athlete that I've ever talked to, they're like, I miss the changing room. I miss
Yeah.
my camaraderie. I miss the talks on the bus. They miss the game, but they don't miss it as much as they miss the connection and those laughs that we have as so my point is that this is the greatest game on the planet. So let's show up for ourselves and for others the best that we can, so that we can just make it a safe place for people to come to play, to explore all of our innate kind of wants and needs as human beings. We can do it, in an ice rink and where it's all about community and coming together. And there's a lot of elements of sport and modern day society that I think are quite toxic But I think that if we start with like this curiosity of getting to know ourselves, we can eradicate that toxicity, and
Mhm.
we can make this the place where again we can maximize people's experience in it, and make that I wish that I would have said this. We're not here to make great hockey players. We're not here to make great hockey players. We're here to make amazing human beings who play hockey.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%, 100% right. What I don't miss, to come back to your locker room theory, I do miss that, and I do miss the talks on the bus ride and in the locker room. What I don't miss are the long bus rides. That's a point where I'm glad that those days are over.
Yeah.
Nick, one more thing before we wrap it up. If you have, I know you mentioned it a lot during the talks and a lot during our little conversation today, but what would be one key message for you to give to my audience?
A key message. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Mhm.
So, um, be curious that you can learn more.
Yeah,
So just no finger pointing, no, but if you're listening to this and you imagine you're listening to this because you're interested in learning more, then be curious. So that's my message, is that nobody's wrong. We just have got this comet tail full of who we are. And my job as a human being is just to get to know me, the full me, which is not just it's not easy. It's an ongoing process that starts with curiosity. So I think that's it. It's just be a little bit curious. What's this knucklehead Canadian been saying to me today? You know what? Just and whether you think I'm right or wrong, but maybe I could just spark a little bit of curiosity of like, how can I get to know myself a bit better? Because maybe I am. I think of myself as my relationship with other people, whereas, it might take a little bit of like self discovery and to become a bit more self aware of who we are. So I think that's the key message, is to be curious.
but then it means that when you really want to know yourself, that you also have to reflect on the good and or the positive and the negative aspects, right? Not just focus purely on the positive ones.
No, I think, but like whenever I've made like those cringy mistakes, it's normally come through my ego. You
Hmm.
know, like I've been operating up in my head. I think that's it. Headspace of reaction of and that's where I'm like, oh man, I wish I wouldn't have said that. I wish I wouldn't have done that. And there is, I don't know if there's a good and a bad in this. There's just a whole of us, and I think inherently we're all good, right?
Yeah.
I think that we can make mistakes, which we can own up to, and I think that again is part of the journey. It's part of maturing. It's part of wisdom, is knowing that we are here because we've made mistakes. And that's that journey of self-awareness, is that it's okay to make mistakes and that we can
Yeah.
learn from it. But to be curious, we then embark on a road of transformation, or trying some tools. We'll make mistakes, we learn. And I think that you're right. There is all of I make mistakes, but I'm also very helpful. There's that yin and the yang, the balance. And I believe life is a balance. Life is like this thing of like, if you look at a teeter totter, right? Those things in the parks. I don't know what you call them
Yeah.
in Germany,
Yeah.
but one kid on one end, one kid on another, and there's this balance, and that goes like this. And there's that can have the highs and the lows. And really, life for me is like this thing of like, if I could just keep this, and as you know, that takes a lot of work. It's
Hmm.
constant. And if I let go, if I stop, if I have one of those days I'm not going to do anything, something's going to flip, right? And then it's like, I got to do a little bit more work to get back to here again. So in my curiosity and in my learning, I know I have to have a morning routine. I know at some point during the day I have to do something for myself, like go to the gym, have a cold plunge, have a sauna. And then I know at the end of the day I have to reflect on my day. I bookend my day, and I have something in my day that where I'm using some tools. And that is hard work. You don't always have the time when you're coaching, when you're raising 3 kids, when you're a husband, when you're traveling. It doesn't, but I have to do my best. And I'm by no means am I perfect at it, but I just do my best. And when I do my best, Simon, I can look in the mirror and I can know I can go to bed and my sleep hygiene is very good. I can put my head on the pillow and I can get a good night's sleep. But it takes work.
Now you said something again that I really want to ask one or two more questions if you have a little bit more time. You said you mentioned it in Stockholm also with the cold plunge, and a couple of guys raised their hands up. Same with breathing or like relaxing. Do you, when you are starting your day, you do your workout, you do your ice bath, meditation, for example, are you like tracking that or like journaling it so you can reflect on those type of things at the end of a week or at the end of a month with different habits, like a habit tracker?
Um, like I I track things normally like I used to. And when I was
Hmm.
in my early part of this journey, I would have a diary, and in the morning I would write down some things that I need to do. I would meditate, and I
Hmm.
would like say some affirmations, and I would just meditate. I'm by no means a religious person. I don't follow any religions, but I kind of feel like there's some connectivity, through meditation to something, like the universe or something. And I just try to sometimes I just imagine being in space. I don't know, and just sucking up all the energy from the stars. It's a bit weird, but I do meditate, and I think I can visualize those things, and I would normally at the end of the day do a bit of journaling. Have I
Hmm.
shown up for myself? Have I shown up for others? Is there anything I can improve upon? And I feel like pen to paper really helped me out. I think there are a lot of trackers, and I have about 3 of them in here on apps. They just
Hmm.
don't seem as genuine as putting pen to paper
Yeah.
or pencil to paper. So I really recommend anyone who's at the start of this journey of curiosity, journaling pen to paper is a real therapeutic exercise. Stream of conscious writing in the morning. I know a lot of people speak about 3 minutes of just write everything that comes down to you. A lot of stuff comes up from that. So I also recommend to people like mentors, like having some guidance, and it could end up being psychological or therapeutic or something like that. But I think that having a guide, particularly in the early parts of this journey, and even me, like I'm 9 years sober, and I still have a guy who I talk to every week.
Hmm.
A mentor who really his job is to call me on my BS. We have weekly updates, and he just like, "Are you sure, Nick?" And he's 70 years old, and he's just smart. He's just
Yeah.
very wise man. So I recommend, having a mentor, having someone who can help you guide you through these like any early stages of curiosity of a transformational program,
Hmm.
and I think that's the thing too, is just be curious of like, how can I transform to be my best self? And then you mentioned the cold plunges again. I do that for a couple of reasons, because it sucks. I hate it. Like it
Yeah.
really is. I put my foot in that thing and I do not want to do it. But it's
Yeah.
literally so easy for me. It's right around the corner from my office. I can do it's laid out for me, but I do it because it's hard, and I know that stimulates that ACC part of your brain, for determination and wanting to try to keep doing things. So I do it, and also um, emotional and regulation. So it gives me techniques of breath work, of being able to breathe through this. And this is where we learn that our emotions are not something to be controlled. They're something to be regulated. You
Hmm.
know, this is where a lot of people come into kind of some controversy of like, I can't let them see me cry. There's a very famous American teacher in martial arts world named Jason Wilson, and there's a lot of YouTube videos of him going around of like when he works with young youth, um, and they all get upset, and he'll literally get on his knees and support that child and say, "Okay, what are your tears here to teach you?" instead of suppressing. See, we have these eye ducts, right? They come out of us for a reason. Obviously, like there's when dust gets in your eyes, it makes liquid so the dust can go out of your eyes. But also, like I could watch an episode of The Simpsons, and when Bart is nice to Lisa, for some reason it just makes me cry because I've really discovered a value around family.
Yeah.
You know, I cried the other day with my 16-year-old stepson when I felt like I'd let him down. And I just something that I said to him, I'm sorry, and these tears just came up. And rather than me suppress them, and I didn't do it on purpose, but I was like, I'm really sorry. And they were tears. And he was like, it's okay. I know you did your best. And so I didn't suppress my emotion. And I know with a lot of the men that I work with, Simon, we suppress emotions. We won't let anyone see us cry. Even if we get angry or happy or sad, we'll suppress it. And it's just like anything. This is all your big vagus nervous system, your big nerve system that goes down into your stomach. You can just imagine we push these things down. We push these things down. And like anything, if you push it down, they're going to come out and they're going to explode in unhealthy and maybe even harmful ways. So this is a way where we can use the sport of hockey as a way to help young people leave that rink with these tools around emotional regulation and become good members of society so that we can create safe communities where young men all of a sudden know that, hey, it's okay to cry. I don't need to suppress our emotions. That means that they make themselves safer. They make their community safer. So yeah, I think that this is why I think cold plunge for me really helped in terms of my breath work and my nervous system regulation. It re-regulates it all, and it's now learned me more. It helped me learn more about emotional regulation. And when I get to understand and have a relationship with my emotions, I have a healthy relationship with myself.
Yeah. That's why I was curious with that question, because I also tried to do cold plunges, some flexibility work, because obviously as a hockey player I'm not that flexible anymore after the years of playing. But a couple of small things that I want to put into my daily routine. And I was always like, I don't need to write it down. I just do it or I don't do it. But then at the end, I don't have like something that shows me if I am consistent in it or not. So I started making the small list, started just to tick off the boxes. And after a week or two, I ticked every yoga session. I ticked taking vitamins, going into the sun, going for a walk, do my workout. But for the cold plunge, yeah, I say it was barely filled out after the 1 or 2 weeks. And then it made me curious, like, why am I not doing this particular thing? And then I
Mm-hmm.
was like catching myself looking for excuses. Like, it's too cold outside. It's still dark outside. Whatsoever, all the excuses. It's too cold. I don't have time for it. So I was really like battling my inner self to go into that thing for 1 or 2 or 3 minutes just
Mm-hmm.
to tick it off, like to challenge me to tick it off. And now I'm at that point where I still hate it, obviously, but I don't want to lose that little streak I started. And it makes it a little fun in a kind of way, because at the end of the month I'm seeing on my paper I only missed 1 or 2 days, and then I can like start the next month and try to improve myself, try to learn from my excuses I was looking for. And I think that the journaling or the diary writing is a really, really helpful tool to achieve those little things in life. And like you said, pen to paper works for me 100% better than using an app, because then it's still another 10 minutes you spend on the phone. Um, and I really like to see it, like my progress on the paper, so I can frame it or put it on a wall or put it on the desk.
Good. Yeah.
Uh,
This is the I think that, well, this is the core of Retribe, is the accountability, Simon, is that what we're doing is we're helping people create. So like where I played hockey, some of the fun years that I played hockey was on a place called the Isle of Wight in
mhm.
England. And it was a little rink off the south coast. and you can, and most of the team had to take a ferry over a little body of water about 2 kilometers long, and I would be at school at university, and I would get the ferry back, and it would be raining, and you get inside the rink, and it would be like condensation would be everywhere, and we would have to practice fairly late at night, and it was miserable. It would be miserable, and you'd get all wet and damp and blah. But I could easily have said to my head coach at the time, I've got to go home and study. But I had a group of like 20 guys, 19 other guys, and it was like I couldn't let them down. That's the
Mm-hmm.
essence of a team: is you show up for the other guys more than you show up for yourself, especially in hockey. So what I found, the idea of the tribe is to form a small group of men. So I would suggest to you to find 2 to 4, like 3 to 6 is a good size for a tribe. And this is what we're creating with Retribe. We're actually developing the app right now here in the Czech Republic, where
Mm-hmm.
people can find a small group of 3 to 6 people. Three can be less than three is a bit awkward. More than six, dynamics can shift. And what you do, and I've got a couple of them here, and again, it's being put into an app. But I have like little green check marks that I send to groups of guys, my little tribes of when I've done things, so that when I hit my cold plunge in the morning, I send that green check mark because I've done it, so that I want everyone else to know that I haven't let them down. And then it also inspires and gives them the incentive. Nick did it. I got to do it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to invite you for the next 7 days to do cold plunge and to send me a little green check mark in the messages, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that you can be like, I've spoken about this on a podcast with Nick. I have to do it. Right?
Yeah, yeah,
So this is what accountability is all
yeah.
about. And we're working from, I get to work from office a few days a week, but also I work from home. I can maybe miss going to the gym. But I have a group of guys that I'm accountable to, my little tribe of men. So I'll invite you to be part of that if you want to. We can pull you in on what it's just again. And we have 3 check marks throughout the day: our morning routine, our self-care, whether that's cold plunge, sauna, gym, and then our evening routine. And all of us are struggling with the evening routine, but I know most of us can get those first 2 check marks in. And again, this is progress, not perfection or anything. So let's just set a challenge: next 7 days, cold plunge, and I want to see 7 check marks from you. Okay?
I will not let you down. I'm ready for that. Won't
Beautiful.
be easy, but I will 100% keep an eye out for that and let you know
Yeah, let's do it.
100%. Nick,
Okay.
thank you so much for joining me today. If that's okay for you, I would put links to Retribe, to your work, and if you want, also to your maybe socials, to for people to learn more about you as a person, about your work, your challenges, and also obviously um, the stuff you mentioned now in the episode. It's not like you just um, said it. I know that you will do it, and you will work towards making a human performance, the human mind, better in any kind of way. So if that's okay, I will link all those details in the description below so everyone can check it out. And obviously, we can challenge everyone who's listening to also join in, and to not with maybe check marks, but just for them to join us on this idea that you shared with the cold plunge. And thanks again for joining, for your insights, for your knowledge that you shared, and for also sharing like details, like personal details about your past. And I think we will stay in touch, hopefully. And I would really enjoy talking to you more about some interesting topics.
For sure, Simon. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate your time and your questions. And the fact that we met in Stockholm, and we're now talking now, is just a sign that we're on the right path. We're on a path of curiosity, of transformation, of learning. and maybe and acknowledging, maybe even unlearning some of the stuff that we've learned from the past, so that we can ultimately, again, just be better human beings playing the best game on the planet. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining. Nick, take care. I wish you a nice week. And like I said, I hope we can talk again in the future.
All the best, for sure.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care. That's it for this episode of Science and Sports. If you enjoyed my podcast, please subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Your feedback is very important to me, so I look forward to your ratings and comments on your favorite podcast platform. Feel free to share the podcast with friends, colleagues, and anyone interested in sports science, athletics, performance, and health. Together we can inspire even more people about this exciting topic.